Okay, the non-spoiler review's out of the way. It's time to break this bitch wide open. Avengers Endgame, spoiler review. Boom! What's up, guys? Got my water here. Oh boy, there's a lot to digest in this movie, and I'm really looking forward to finally diving into this one, because it's weird when you do non-spoiler reviews for movies this big, because you can't talk about anything. So now I can talk about everything. It's going to be really nice. First off, I posted on Twitter, post your favorite moment from Avengers Endgame, and I will shout out a few of them, discuss a few of the topics. And I got a long list of you guys, and what I'm going to do is at the end of this, I will go down the list and I will go through those topics. But I'll give you one juicy one right now. This is the latest one, hot off the press. Luke Baxter, he says you should talk about Nebula and her journey in the film. Really, her journey throughout this whole thing has been interesting, and I even posted that I think Nebula is like the most underrated character in the MCU. Just because she's so interesting, but they don't really give us too much, you know? There's always somebody to the, in front of her. Like, I find her more interesting than Gamora, actually. And Gamora's an interesting character, but Nebula, she's just such an interesting character because she was once this whole person, and Thanos has literally turned her into a machine, a robot. But there's still, like, a fraction of who she used to be there, so she's always constantly struggling with that, and she played a major part in Endgame, actually. And really, it's great that she was there with Tony Stark for 20 some odd days on that ship, just floating in space. I think Tony would have even gone more mad if he didn't have Nebula there to kind of prop him up a little bit, because we see in that scene after they're rescued by Captain Marvel, and see, I'm already jumping forward, but we're gonna do it like that. Tony Stark is not who he used to be. He is angry. There's this great confrontation between him and Captain America, Steve Rogers. And that scene, to me, is one of my favorite scenes in this movie, because we've always kind of sided with Steve Rogers. And I think Steve Rogers is right. But, we never really hear Tony's side that much, because he's this businessman, really. He always puts the good of the business ahead of everything else. But this is a broken down Tony, and he really, he breaks down, he cries, and he tells Steve that we were supposed to be a team, you were supposed to be there for me, but you were not there for me. And that scene almost made me cry. It was so sad, and it was really the most genuine we've seen the character Tony Stark throughout this whole run. And just to bounce on to the character Tony Stark, Iron Man, I think he was probably the best character of this. Him and definitely Captain America. They both have their scenes. But, this kind of brings him full circle, because that first movie of Iron Man. And this is his, ultimate vindication throughout this whole journey. It's, in the end, it's Iron Man, it's Tony Stark that saves the day. And in that last scene where he has the gauntlet on, his makeshift gauntlet or whatever, and he snaps his fingers, and right before he says that, he says, "I am Iron Man." I just remember the crowd just erupting. And then after that, he dies, and it's just the saddest thing ever. And I guess if you can say anything about Avengers Endgame, it's the characters, and how they really chose to focus on the characters, because I'm glad they didn't go the same route that they did with Infinity War and make this just a straight up all-out action movie. There are some emotional moments in Infinity War, but for the most part, that's this big action spectacle with this shocking ending. So this really is, what's the fallout of that? How do these characters pick up the pieces and deal with that? And I do think after, I let this movie set for a couple days, I still want to go see it a second time. I've made my mind up on that. It's definitely a movie that's there with you after you leave it. And, you go through all these emotions dealing with it. I feel like I'm a little bit of a different person now than I was when I did my non-spoiler review. And that's because of the focus on the characters that the Russo brothers chose to do in this movie. I thought it was beautifully done, actually. I still think there's a little bit of some tonal issues, some pacing issues here and there. But overall, we're talking minor issues I had with this movie. One big one, which we're going to get into that. But one of the big shocking things, too, is in the first 20 minutes, they kill Thanos. everybody kind of puts aside their grief for a bit because Captain Marvel comes back and she says, we got to go kill Thanos. That's it. Let's do this. And so they're all like, yeah, let's do this. Thor's like, I like this one. They go, and you thinking that this scene's going to play out a different way. Maybe Thanos will stand up and he'll escape or something like that. But no. Thor says, let's do it right this time, and he chops his freaking head off, which is pretty badass, actually. So from this moment, I was like, oh shit, where is this movie going to go? They just killed Thanos, so what's the rest of the movie going to be? And the rest of the movie being that they save their friends. They want to go back and they want to save their friends, and so they use Scott Lang. I loved Ant-Man in this movie, and you know what? I think Ant-Man is best when he's not in his own movies. Like, I loved him in Civil War. I think he was like the scene stealer in Civil War. Paul Rudd is so great as the character. But I just love when he bounces off other characters because he's kind of a fan like us. He's always like gushing around Steve Rogers and Captain America. But really, if it wasn't for Scott Lang, really if it wasn't for a rat saving Scott Lang, then Endgame would not exist. He comes out of the quantum realm and then he comes up with this idea, hey, we can use the quantum realm to go back and save these guys because I was literally gone for 5 days. And in your world, it's 5 years. So we can play with time here. We can go back. And I like how they kind of brushed over the time travel rules because every time travel movie, sometimes they spend way too much time trying to explain the technology. They don't do that at all with this one. They say, you know what? If we go back and like say we kill baby Thanos, it's not going to kill Thanos because technically it's still the future. It's just you going to the past in the future. It's already confusing, but it really makes sense if you think about it. So another fun part of this movie was, and surprising actually, is that they bounced forward 5 years. 5 years later. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And these are very different characters 5 years later, which I think was awesome. First off, Tony Stark, he's got a child now. And when you have children, you become a different person. I can tell that from experience. I was a very different person before I had my children. They become your world. They become everything. They are first place. And I get where Tony Stark's coming from on this. His daughter is his everything. And God, those moments between him and his daughter are just beautiful. And the I love you 3000 line. It was nice to see so much heart in Tony Stark in this movie. And then we bounce over to Norway where Thor is pretty much a Cheetos munching video game guy. This was weird. But I kind of see what they were doing because if in Infinity War, Thor stole the show. Thor had his magic moment. He was awesome in Infinity War. So I think they chose to go a different route, maybe explore the character a little further because Thor does have those tendencies to kind of veer off. He can be immature sometimes. And so there were some really funny moments in this. I think over time, years from now, as this movie settles, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about what they did with Thor in this movie. He does have some nice moments here and there, but he was more serving a comedy role in this movie than in the previous movies. But they really channeled that in Thor Ragnarok. So I'm kind of in the middle with what they did with Thor in this actually. And now we're going to jump over to we're just going to go ahead and jump into what my big problem was, and most of you guessed it from my non-spoiler review. Hulk. What they did with Hulk. As a fan of the guy, when I was a kid, I used to watch The Incredible Hulk with my father, and the thing that I always connected with about the Hulk was the rage inside, and how the Hulk would take over when Bruce Banner was having a bad day or was in the middle of an altercation or something like that. And most of the time when we want to unleash our anger, we can't really do that in society because there could be repercussions for that, whereas the Hulk, he is that avenue for Bruce Banner. And so that's my favorite part of the character. Even in the first Avengers, when he has his Hulk out moment, that's a really cool moment. I love that. I love when he just can't control himself anymore, and you see almost this childlike nature in him and this undeniable strength. The thing about the Hulk is the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. I have no problem with them exploring a different version of the character. I know Professor Hulk is in the comics. I'm cool with that. But if you remember back in Infinity War, at the beginning, we have a Hulk, Loki says, and then Hulk fights Thanos. and he gets his ass handed to him. I have no problem with that scene. It sets up who Thanos is as a character. This is a real threat. Having Hulk come back full circle in this movie and have that moment. I'm not saying he has to save the day, you know, to be the ultimate winner of the thing, but the scene where you have the 3 core Avengers, 3 of the 4, you have Iron Man, you have Captain America, you have Thor. They face off against Thanos in that epic battle at the end. As they're fighting the guy, you know, Thanos, he's kicking their asses one by one. And there's this moment, I'm literally gripping my chair in the theater. I'm like, yes, yes, here we go, here we go. I just know that Hulk's gonna land in there, and then they're just gonna have this knockdown, drag out fight. He's gonna be protecting his friends, his partners in crime, and there's just gonna be this awesome fight, and then he's just gonna beat the shit out of Thanos, you know. And then Tony Stark would come in and you know, do the Infinity Gauntlet thing and end the movie. It wouldn't have gotten in the way of anything. It would have been an awesome moment. It would have been some fan service, for sure. But Hulk fans like myself, and I don't want to speak for everybody, were just completely gutted by the way the character didn't have that ultimate vindication by the end of this movie. He had some funny moments here and there. I like when he was doing the selfie. That was funny. But it's just a big thing for me is how the Hulk has been handled over these last few movies. Even in Thor Ragnarok, he's pretty much a joke. And it, you know, as a person who loves the character so much, remembering back to director Louis Leterrier's Incredible Hulk, which I still think that movie's highly underrated. I think if you're a Hulk fan, it gives you everything you need in a Hulk movie. You know, you get that emotion, you get that rage, you get this great final fight with Hulk and Abomination, you know. And then at the end, you see Hulk, he's pretty much a child. He has this emotion for Betty, and then he leaves. That's what Hulk does at the end of, you know, in the TV show, in a lot of the movies. He leaves at the end of the movie. You know, he's almost like he's ashamed. And that's one thing I love about the character so much. I'm getting chill bumps just thinking about the guy right now. So it hurts me that the way the Hulk was dealt with in this movie. It really does. Most of you guys didn't even care. You know, I know a lot of people don't even give a shit about the Hulk. And that's awesome. And this is still a great movie. It really is. But that's just my one little selfish thing that really broke my heart about this, is I didn't get that Hulk vindication at the end of the movie. But I rattled on way too long about that. Now let's jump over to the time travel thing. You know, everybody goes to different points in time to collect the Infinity Stones. And this was a fun segment of the movie, actually. You know, you have Black Widow, Hulk, Thor, Iron Man. They all go back to 2012 to collect the Tesseract. And that was your Back to the Future Part 2 moment, really. You know, seeing everything that's still going on from 2012, and then they're having to kind of intercept. My favorite moment of that really is the Captain America versus Captain America scene. He's fighting himself. And the scene where he says, I could do this all day, you know, the 2012 version, and then Captain America's like, yeah. I just remember the theater just erupting. It was so freaking hilarious. And then when he looks down, he's like, that's America's ass. That's probably my favorite line of the whole movie, really. The America's ass movie. Even in all the Twitter comments that I got from you guys, that was probably like every 4th comment, the America's ass comment. And, you know, just to talk about Captain America, I think he was so great in this movie, because if you remember in Infinity War, he was good. There was a couple nice moments there, but at the end of the day, he kind of took a back seat to what was going on. Whereas in this movie, this was a Captain America movie and a half. I mean, in that big final fight, when he gets Thor's hammer, that pretty much made up for my Hulk bitching. That scene was so amazing because, you know, you remember in Age of Ultron when he lifted the hammer and it kind of shook a little bit. But I still never thought that he would actually wield the hammer. And sure enough, he does. And then you got Thor holding Stormbreaker. That final scene is really, out of the whole MCU franchise, it's definitely one of the best battle scenes, if not the best battle scene. You got the whole Captain America Avengers Assemble scene, and then all the Avengers that had died in Infinity War coming out of those portals. I mean, you're talking just fanboys' wet dream. A couple of nice really moments there too, like Scarlet Witch just being a complete badass. And really it just goes to show how awesome Scarlet Witch is as a character. To me, she's one of my favorite female characters of the whole bunch, besides Nebula. Captain Marvel in this, I'm going to say, and maybe it's because she's so new to this, she really did nothing for me in the movie. I don't know if it's Brie Larson's fault, if it's the character's fault. Brie Larson really showed very little emotion. I don't think she earned that, strong, ripply, powerful female mantle that she constantly is, praising herself for. And I'm not like this guy that hates Brie Larson or anything like that. I'm neither here nor there for the subject. But to me, it's just you got to earn it, and she hasn't earned it yet. And so really in this movie, she has some nice moments. She saves Tony Stark. She really does a great job against Thanos in the movie. But there's still this like disconnect with her. And I could feel that in the audience too. Some of them were cheering and dug it, but it wasn't like what you got for like the core Avengers, Captain America and Iron Man. Now, one of the nice touches here was Spider-Man. When he comes through the portal, he's fighting. There's a lot of great, fun Spider-Man scenes in this. And it was nice to have that, everything come full circle with him and Tony. Because in Infinity War, Tony had to hold Peter Parker as he died. And so it was the opposite in this movie. Peter Parker was there with Tony when he passed away. And it was a really touching moment. Not a dry eye in the theater during that scene. But, just to talk about Peter Parker a bit, if we're, if these guys are coming back after 5 years, we see Peter Parker in the same grade with his friends. I was kind of scratching my head a bit because if he's going back 5 years later, he's going to the same high school. Wouldn't there be some questions? I don't know, but I guess the world does know about this whole Thanos issue, so maybe they would just let him enter back into the same grade that he was in. For Peter Parker, it wouldn't have made a difference anyway because he doesn't really feel the 5 years. But still, the scene did have me scratching my head. And also, Thanos as a character is different in this movie, as he would be, because I heard a lot of chatter about Thanos was this ultimate badass in Infinity War, and he didn't come across as that. Well, I get that because he went through a lot after he snapped the finger. When you snap that finger, there is a physical debt and an emotional debt that you're going to pay. And this was the 2014 version of Thanos that was fighting with the Avengers in this movie. So that is a little bit of a different version of the character. So I think they handled Thanos actually pretty well in this movie. He was still Thanos. He was still, a badass. I mean, that final fight between him and pretty much all of the Avengers, he's still kicking ass. But I do like that scene where, after Tony snaps his fingers and we see, it's like Thanos is kind of dealing with the inevitable. He knows that he's about to die. And there's almost this like sense of sorrow, regret there, and then we see him kind of wither away in the dust. I thought that scene was handled very well, actually. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about before I get into the Twitter is Captain America. And, at the end, when he goes and to return the Infinity Stones, and he's gone for decades, and he passes the shield on to Falcon. Captain America's two best friends were Falcon and Bucky. I think that shield should have went to Bucky, if I'm being honest. It doesn't bother me that it went to Falcon, but I think Bucky earned it more because this was his childhood friend, They were in the service together. There's a huge history between Captain America and Bucky. So I think the shield should have went to Bucky. That's just a personal preference. Now, guys, as far as the rating, I gave it a purchase worthy. I stand by that. I still had a couple issues. I was really, really butthurt with the Hulk in this movie. But still, it's like I said, it is definitely in the top 5, 6-ish MCU movies. I'm actually recording an MCU ranking after this, and it's definitely going to be up there. It's still a very satisfying conclusion to the MCU. The MCU, if they did anything, they really knocked it out of the park with this whole run. There are some movies that I have issues with, but for the most part, especially the Avengers movies, they did it right. Kevin Feige is doing such a phenomenal job with the MCU. It's kind of weird to me that they're closing off Phase 3 with not this movie, but Far From Home. But still, I guess timeline-wise, it works. So yeah, sticking with definitely, I'm going to go high purchase worthy this time. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it again. I'm going to try to see it on IMAX throughout the week, because on the weekend, there's no chance. So now we're going to get to those Twitter posts. I'm just going to read them for you guys, okay? I probably touched on a lot of these topics. Okay, hey, isn't that Devon Graham? He says, the last shot of the movie, nothing in the MCU carries the weight and power of the final shot and its perfection. Yeah, when that camera is like panning across all the characters throughout this thing, You know, and the scene where Happy Hogan too was talking to Tony Stark's daughter, such a tearjerker. James Gregory Barrett says when Cap picked up Thor's hammer, hell yeah, man, that scene was freaking amazing. Probably one of my favorite scenes out of the whole MCU. If I had to do like top 10 scenes, that would definitely be probably number one. Nick Acosta says favorite moment is Cap with Mjolnir. That's a weird word to say. I was so giddy and geeking out hardcore, I couldn't believe my eyes. Yeah, that's good. You're gonna hear that one a lot. My buddy Cody Leach, the I knew it scene. When Thanos is about to kill Thor and then Thor raises up and he says, I knew it. And then of course Captain America has the hammer. So badass. Womp Stomp Films. What's up, guys? From Never Hike Alone. The fattest Avenger, Thor, of course. Corey Brown says the final shot of the film, literally the final shot, before Endgame, Captain America, the First Avenger, was my favorite MCU film. So that is the moment I've been waiting for almost a decade for. Perfection. Rachel's Reviews says, I love that a person with no powers saved everyone in the end. Of course, she's talking about Tony Stark. Tom says the portal scene at the end where we see 200 heroes. Darnell Major says my favorite is seeing Captain Marvel in action for the first time. She had a couple of nice moments in the movie, but like I said, she definitely was one of my lesser favorite moments of the movie. Joey F. Misfit says haven't seen it yet. My fault. I don't mind spoilers because I will see it. Joey, you need to see this movie, man. He's curious to see what happens to the Hulk. It's Iden posts this awesome little gif of Captain America trying to lift Thor's hammer in Age of Ultron. David Charpentier, Iron Man's final act of courage, yes. Gore the movie god, what's up, Gore? He says, Hail Hydra. That scene was hilarious when Captain America's in the elevator and he just reaches over and says, Hail Hydra. So good. Alexandra Vaughn, what's up, Alexandra? She says, when everyone came out of the portals, also when Tony calls Thor Big Lebowski. Yeah, that's great. Ryan O'Toole says Captain America wielding Mjolnir and facing 2012 Captain America, America's ass. Low Carb Monster, Troy, what's up? He says, let's talk about the real superhero of the film, which is the Rat. Yeah, the Rat. Not for the Rat. Endgame would have never happened. Zach Pope says, I'm going to do something different than others, but I loved the cheeseburger talk between Happy and the kid. Yeah, that brought you right back to the first Iron Man when the first thing he wanted when he got out of the desert was a cheeseburger. That's a true thing too. Like, I've been deployed quite a few times, and all you can think about when you're deployed is an American cheeseburger. It's true. Ryan McCormick says the line, he's showing the movie line that he had. Yeah, my theater was packed. Sad Robot says the Scarlet Witch getting payback. Absolute favorite scene. Scarlet Witch is so awesome in this. Jeff Meyer says, I don't want to put any specifics because I don't want to spoil for friends on my timeline who haven't seen it, but they ruin a certain character based on the decisions they made. Not your favorite character, the other one. I think he's thinking about Thor, actually. So I'm sure there's some people out there that had problems with Thor in this movie. Josh Kegley says, not going to go into much context, but the fact that the simplest one-liners in the universe makes such an impact with the emotions of this film. By the way, love your channel. Keep up the awesome stuff. Thanks, Josh. Lose my voice. Fajner Afnan says, I can't risk spoiling for others, but there's a shot in one character facing off against a huge number of enemies. Absolutely chilling shot. And then a shout out to one super underrated MCU character, Nebula. Really happy to see a lot of her. Yeah, Nebula is such an awesome character. I wish they would have gave us a Nebula movie, actually, if I'm being honest. Sam Lynn says everything with Cap in the last hour, and really the whole movie, were the best parts of the movie. And Avengers movie finally spent time on my favorite Avenger, and it pays off big. Yes, it did pay off big. Troy Candy says, without a doubt, the Cap versus Cap scene. Hell yeah. Jonathan Hukill says, Thor as the dude overplayed a touch, however. Yeah, there were some funny moments with Thor. Ethan's securing the bag says, just here to say the movie should have been titled Avengers Oh Snap, but Disney didn't like that idea, I guess. That would have been hilarious, actually. Colin Chinella says the moment where Tony says, I am Iron Man. Oh, tear-jerking. Brandon Humes says that hammer scene, couldn't believe it, totally epic. Dan Schoenig says 3,000 and the gold band. I well up thinking about those moments. Amazing film. They nailed it. Daryl W. Perry says, Captain America getting Thor's hammer. Dude, Thor's moment with his mother. Yeah, that was a nice moment actually with his mother. Raul Alcentar says, when everyone came back and Cap said, Avengers Assemble. Chill bumps during that scene. Antoine Daniel says the visuals of all the heroes together and is the most epic moment ever. Yeah, that's one scene that I'm probably going to be watching a lot. Lucas Tizano says, I'll get you all the cheeseburgers you want. Yep. Burger says, I love you 3000. Nerdy 8-Man says, the final battle, of course. Andrew Dick says, my favorite part is when Thor got fat. Movie Man loves Endgame says, when Captain America says Avengers Assemble. Yeah, you're seeing a lot of those Captain America ones. Essentially, Simon says, one thing that I really want everyone's opinion on is whether Spider-Man is worthy of wielding Mjolnir. That's a really good topic, actually. I don't think at his current age, as young as he is, I don't think so. Because I think you have to have some wisdom about you, and I don't think Spider-Man at this point in time is there. Bolly says, when the snap came back and there was that line shot with Cap saying Avengers Assemble. And this person just has, let's see, Rolo73 says, highly my favorite part of the film was the end battle scene, especially the Thor and Captain America hammer scene. Cody Ward says, my favorite moment was when Cap used Mjolnir. That was badass. HMK101 says, one line, I knew it. You knew what you know what I'm talking about. Yep. Eugen Kagan says, War Machine, so he's an idiot. Yeah, that scene was so great. And then he punches Star-Lord in the face. That was so good. Gareth Kowalski says, not going to go for a popular one. That's America's Ass or Hail Hydra elevator scene. Both of those are great. Eric Ain't Here says, Thor, Noob Master 69 called me a dickhead again. Matt Raymond says, America's Ass. And then Teacup says, your mom, talking about my mom. So that's hilarious. But yeah, thank you guys. So many great ones there. So many great moments in this movie. And anyway, yeah, that's the Drumdums spoiler review for Avengers Endgame. Tomorrow, going to be doing a full Scream stream on this movie with my partners in crime, as well as Durbin and Sean Chandler. So yeah, looking forward to that. Anyway, guys, my battery's running out, so be sure to come over to Killer Flicks where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free for Fridays. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a great day. And Avengers Assemble.